Just a disclaimer before we begin with this video, Theo. Just like with the last two parts of Chapter 11 that I narrated, Chapter 12 does contain some sensitive material describing assault and sensitive subject matters that viewers may find disturbing and or upsetting. If you are sensitive to these type of topics being discussed in this video, I suggest you click off this video right now and go watch another of my videos. And I also want to ask is you please respect your comments in the comment section, as these subject matters are pretty much upsetting and even disturbing to some viewers that have gone through stuff that was similar to this or whatever. Now, with that being said, let's begin. Ron and Kim watched as the coroner loaded Bonnie's body into the black body bag and zipped it up, then placed it on a metal stretcher and wheeled it back towards the coroner's van. The fire department had managed to put most of the fire out, yet some flames still remained of what remained of the building, which crumbled into burning rubble. Kim and Ron were still in tears as they watched Bonnie being hauled off. In the corridors with the sirens blaring, they had known Bonnie since they were kids, and although they didn't usually get along well, Kim and Ron still consider her close to them. They had been told by the coroner that the cause of death was not just blood loss, but due to Bonnie's severed limb, but also due to the severe internal injuries she had received during the hands of the Black Shadow. It had already been confirmed that, in fact, been violated repeatedly as well. Kim and Ron couldn't even begin to imagine the torture that the young poor woman suffered at the hands of Ridley and his man, and filled them with sorrow. "I'm sorry about your friend, you two," Lloyd said as he walked over to them, "but you did all the best you could." Ron said nothing and just walked towards the van, his expression filled with anger and sorrow. Kim followed after him. "Ron, stop," Kim said, grabbing his hand. "Where are you going?" Ron just glanced back, then said, "To look for any Black Shadow thugs that might have escaped. They need to be put down like the rest of them." He then opened the doors to the back of the van and saw a case of assault rifles. He reached for one, but then Kim stopped them halfway, grabbing his hand. "Ron, I know what you're thinking, and it's not going to help anyone," she insisted. "Let go, Kim," Ron said calmly, but he had the tone still of seriousness into it. "Ron, please listen to me," Kim pleaded. "What happened to Bonnie was terrible, and I know how you're feeling right now. I'm feeling the same way, but going out there and try to get revenge isn't going to help anyone. Certainly not you. Also, look what happened to you now. You almost gave in to the red rage again." "I fought it back," Ron repeated flatly, "but it's not a problem now." "Maybe not now, but what do you think what may happen next time you lose control? You're already stressed and angry enough as it is, and you do know what triggers it," Kim argued. "Besides, you don't even know if there were any guards or so. Standing out there with a weapon isn't going to help. Both of us need to take time to heal from this, just like with Japan." "And how?" Ron suddenly snapped, spinning around with an angry expression. "That monster Ridley is always a step ahead of us, and we have no idea where he is. Bonnie may have not known while in captivity, but she's dead now. And so is any knowledge that she had about these murderous animals. We need to face the facts, Kim. We're never going to find Ridley or those maniacs who followed him. He's covered in his tracks too good." "Don't say that, Ron," Kim shot back. "Ridley may be smart, but I'm sure we'll find a way to find him. You know already what he looks like, and so do I." "That doesn't mean anything," Ron replied. "It's not like Ridley's just gonna go waltzing here out in the public and risk being seen. Even if he erased his records, someone in the crowd might recognize him, and I'm sure that's why Ridley's never shown his face. I know it was him because he was behind that evil devil mask, KP, and I'm certain of it. I may have not seen his face, but his hair looked very close to Ridley's hair, like in his criminal photo, so I have no doubt it was him. He might still be around somewhere, and we've got to find him before he kills again." We have no proof that Ridley's still here, and for all we know, he may not have been here to begin with, Kim insisted. It's just like you said, Ridley won't just go out in public without the risk of being caught. I know that you're absolutely obsessed with catching this madman, and I am too. But we can't just rush in without a plan. We don't know where Ridley is right now. Ron simply looked down at the ground, taking everything Kim had just said, and he knew deep down that it was all true. He wanted nothing more to do than to see Ridley behind bars, but without any idea to where the Black Shadow hideout was, there was literally no way of being able to locate Ridley. Ron and so many other people had lost many loved ones to that monster that when bombed Japan, and now Kim and Ron had lost Bonnie to the Black Shadow as well. If it wasn't bad enough, Dr. Director also informed them that not only were Bonnie's sisters dead, but so were her parents. The Black Shadow had murdered Bonnie's entire family just to get their hands on her and her sisters. Ron thought of the many different things Kim and him knew, such as Monique and Tara. Then he felt his spine tingle as he worried that they may be targeted next. Wade had already been targeted by Black Shadow, and he had lost his mother because of it. Kim? Ron paused with a sigh, then felt himself tearing up again. I don't know what to do anymore. Every day we wake up, it's just more and more death, all because of that monster wants us dead. What if Monique or Tara ended up next on Ridley's hits list? I know he's probably going to go after them next. Ridley's already shown that he's willing to go after anyone we know, so he could just try and track us down. He won't, Ron, Kim assured him. Lloyd and Nelson did a sweep of what was left of the train yards with the other Global Justice agents, but we found no other Black Shadow thugs or any sign of Ridley, so I doubt anyone would follow us back to our hideout. Just then, Dr. Director approached Kim and Ron with a sad look, clearly understanding the effects of Bonnie's death had on them. Ron glanced over at her and then sighed. Got any useful info on us? He asked in a disdained tone. Ron, I am very sorry about Bonnie, Betty began, but I promise you we'll do whatever we can to track that monster down. I've got every agent with Global Justice on the case, and the FBI and the fields have gotten involved as well. They're going to do everything they can to track him and his organization down. And I do have a bit of good news, despite the tragedy that occurred here. You do? Kim asked, sounding slightly relieved, but still fulfilled with sorrow. What news? I hope it's better than the disgusting recording I saw this morning, Ron said in a rather harsh voice. Please try and calm yourself, Ron, Dr. Director said calmly. I understand Bonnie's death had really hit you and Kim hard, but you need to compose yourself and ease your temper. Ron then glanced back at Kim, who nodded. Then he turned to Betty and sighed. Sorry, he replied. It's not your fault, Ron, Dr. Director assured him. I know that both of you must be feeling right now about Bonnie. I'm just upset about this as you two are. But you can't let your emotions get the better of you. You must move on from this, just like when you did when Japan was attacked. I'll try, Ron said, with still doubt in his voice. So what's the news you got for us? Kim asked. One of her agents captured a Black Shadow informer amongst their ranks and got him to spill his secrets. I interrogated him for any info where the Black Shadow hideout was and about Ridley, but he was a tough nut to crack, Betty explained. However, the informer did spill one single secret about Ridley, a bit small info. He did? What did he know? Ron asked, still whining a bit. Well, the informer said he knew very little about Ridley, except for some place named Dark Wood. I researched it, but I found almost nothing about it on the surface web, Dr. Director explained. When I searched it up on the dark web, I found some info on a small town named Darkwood, and I'm guessing that it might have been the place where Ridley grew up. I'm not fully sure, but after looking over the review on Ridley and from the mental hospital years ago, I'm guessing that's where he was raised. Where is his town located? Kim asked. About 6 hours away from Middleton, Dr. Director replied. I managed to find the location on the dark web, but very little info on his own. Other than that, it was abandoned over 10 years ago. I want you and Kim to head down there tomorrow to investigate that town for any useful clues that might tell anything about it regarding Ridley's past. I'm not exactly sure what you'll find in that abandoned town, but if there's any possible evidence that will link us to anything on that madman, then it's worth looking into. All right, me and Kim will head there tomorrow and see what we can find, Ron said, his mood a bit more lightened. I'm eager to find anything that we can on that monster. He's killed enough people already, and I won't let him keep winning. Good, Betty replied. I want you to get a head start there around 6 a.m. Since the place is so far away, I would suggest using the fly-in mode on Kim's coupe, since it will help you get there a bit faster. I also suggest returning back to the hideout to rest up, since you both have seen a lot already. Kim had checked her communicator and saw that it was 4:37 p.m. They had been there for only a few hours, but since it felt so much longer. Both Ron and Kim were exhausted from the whole mission, and even more upset over the fact that the mission was pretty much a failure, since Bonnie had died from her injuries. They agreed that heading back to the hideout was the best option right now, and since all of them were so upset and exhausted, Lloyd and Nelson rejoined them, and they headed towards the van where once Dr. Director dismissed them. When Kim began driving them back to the hideout, the other vans headed off back to Global Justice HQ, as Kim headed off in the other direction towards the hideout, activating the cloaking device to avoid being seen. Everyone was silent on the way back, including Rufus, who had stayed silent ever since Bonnie had been declared dead, and Ron ended up almost giving in to the red rage again. As a result of that, he was nervous, and afraid that Ron may end up losing control again, like in Japan, so he stayed quiet for the whole time, hoping that Ron would one day maintain control over the evil lurking in his mind. Once they all returned to the hideout, about 30 minutes later, Kim headed towards hers and Ron's quarters. Ron had headed for the shower. Rufus had jumped out of the battle suit pocket and followed Kim into her room. Still worried about Ron, as Kim was halfway into her room, her mother and Possible had exited her room. Upon seeing Kim returning back from the failed mission, Anne already had been informed by Dr. Director on her way home from her job at the hospital about what happened at the freight train yards, and Anne had been so made aware of Bonnie's death. Kim, you all right, honey? Anne asked Kim upon noticing her saddened expression. Kim stopped near her bedroom door and faced her mother. Oh, hey, Mom, she replied in a sad voice. I'll be fine, I guess. Kim, Anne began, Dr. Director told me about Bonnie, and I'm very sorry about what happened. If you ever need to speak to someone about it, you can tell me. Kim shook her head, clearly not wanting to be bothered. Mom, I'll be fine, Kim said in a more firm and defiant voice. She then turned to leave. No, you're not all right, Kim, Anne insisted, then grabbed Kim by the wrist. I could tell something's bothering you, and you're clearly upset about it. And I don't think it's Bonnie. Please tell me. Kim held her back to turn to Anne, yet she still leaned her head forward and spoke in a troubled voice. I killed people, Kim began in a distraught voice. I've never killed anyone before, and it's bothering me a lot. Kim turned around, now visible with tears in her eyes. And it's not all that. I'm just worried about Ron. Kim wiped her tears from her eyes. Every time he loses control of his emotions, that evil force within his mind grows stronger, and he almost lost control again, like he did in Japan after Bonnie died from her injuries. It took everything he had to keep himself from giving into the red rage again. Every day, I worry that Ron might actually go up losing full control of himself permanently, and it's tearing me apart. Kim embraced her mother and let her tears flow, not holding back. Anne embraced her, fully understanding the weight of everything that had thrust upon her daughter. Kim had not only been forced to kill to defend herself, but she was also worried about her boyfriend. Anne could only imagine how hard it might have been for her to deal with all that. Kim, honey, Anne soothed. You did what you had to do in order to survive and the success of your mission. I know that killing someone, even in self-defense, isn't easy. But don't forget about those men you shot. They were very evil individuals that would have no problem in killing you and Ron if they had gotten the chance. Also, Ron's a very strong person. He's not likely to back down without a fight. And I'm so confident that he won't let some evil possesses him that easily again. But what if he doesn't? Kim stammered fearfully. What if something happens to him that causes Ron to fully lose control and give in completely? There's no way any of us would hope that he could stand against someone such evil and powerful like that. I don't even think Shigo would stand a chance against Ron if that happened. As much as Anne wanted to assure Kim that everything would be fine, deep down, she had to admit that Kim had a good point. Ron's emotional struggle against the Red Rage had gone unnoticed by everyone else in the hideout, including Kim's family. If Ron actually did end up surrendering to the Red Rage at some point in the future, and honestly don't know how anyone could stand a chance against him in a fight. Wade's report of what happened to Ron in Japan had proven just to be dangerous and destructive as he could be fully under the control of the Red Rage. And if it did happen again, what in a way to prevented Ron from regaining control of himself, there was no telling what would happen. I don't know, Kim, Anne replied, but I'm sure that as long as Ron has you and everyone else in his life that he cares about, he should have no problem keeping a strong hold of his humanity. I hope so, Kim said, still embracing Anne. But I'm still also worried about my other friends, like Monique and Tara. Ridley went after Bonnie just to try and lure us into a trap and kill us, and he might do the same thing again. You don't have to worry about them, Anne reassured. Dr. Director told me that these two are being relocated to where the hideout, though, due to what happened with Bonnie. She doesn't have to want the risk of them becoming victims as well. Kim felt a wave of relief wash over her upon hearing what remembered the town was called Darkwood. Speaking of Ridley, Kim pulled out her embrace. Dr. Director actually captured an informer and he told her about a place called Darkwood, where she thinks Ridley was raised. She wants me and Ron to go down there and investigate it tomorrow. Darkwood? I've never heard of that town before, Anne replied. Neither have I, Kim replied. Betty told me that no place on the surface web had any info on it except for the dark web. It's apparently abandoned, and if there isn't any info as to why it was abandoned, Ron and I are hoping to find somewhere that might lead us to Ridley. We'll be heading out there tomorrow early, since 6 hours away. 6 hours? That's awfully far, Anne exclaimed. Yes, it is, Kim said, but it'll be worth it if it means finding anything that will lead us to Ridley. You've got a point there, Kim agreed. I want to be able to get back to living our lives again, without having to stay under hiding, constantly having to have global justice escorts following me into and from the hospital every day, just to be careful out there. We will, Mom, Kim promised. Meanwhile, in the shower, Ron stood there under the running hot water with meditative stance, trying to reach out to Yori. Yori, please hear me, Ron fought, hoping Yori would respond. He got no response and he began losing hope. Ron tried clearing his mind, but everything that had happened back in the abandoned train yard had greatly stressed him out, and Bonnie's death had made it all more worse. Yori, I really need you. Please say something. Anything, Ron practically begged in his mind. All Ron could really hear was the sound of the shower water running, with the water flowing over him, but no response from Yori. Ron wondered that if something might have happened to Yori, but quickly dismissed it as he thought that no one he knew where she was, not even himself. Ron couldn't figure out why Yori wasn't responding, but began to grow more worried by the second. Yori, I need you! Ron yelled in his mind, punching the shower wall. Upon not getting a response, Ron sank to the bottom of the shower to his knees and sobbed softly. Without Yori, Ron had feared the Red Rage would grow stronger and stronger until he finally lost control permanently and ended up hurting the ones he loved. Ron regretted ever tapping into his evil power to begin with, but it hadn't been entirely his fault. That mecha suit thug made death threats towards Kim and the ones he loved. His fear won out at the end. Ron had tapped into the Red Rage out of fear, for not only for Kim's life, but the lives of those he cared about as well. It had cost him dearly. Ron was now struggling to keep a hold of his humanity, all because he never ever used that evil power, and every day was a struggle to hold it back, the Red Rage, and taking a hold of his mind from all the sorrow and horror and the rest that Team Possible faced at the hands of the Black Shadow. Ron had just remembered what Master Sensei had told him all those nights ago, about how he and Kim would face the very hard times. And now he was understanding how serious Sensei had been. Ron was not only facing a battle against the enemy operated in the shadows, but also internal battle for over control of his soul. and this was a battle he had come so close to losing several times over. Ron knew deep down that if he lost Kim or any of those closest to him, there would be nothing to keep the red rage from held back, and he'd lose himself entirely. Kim and his loved ones were the ones that gave him strength to hold back the red rage and keep in control of his anger, fear, and sorrow. But if they were there suddenly to be removed from Ron's life, nothing would stop him from losing his humanity completely. He had become a slave to the red rage, and that was something that terrified Ron more than ever. The thought of actually be turning into something very evil, the very thing he and Kim swore to protect, words struck to his very soul. Ron remembered at one point years ago, one of Draken's inventions actually turned him evil temporarily, turning him into a villain known as Zorprox. As Zorprox, Ron was more of a goofy, hyperactive villain, similar to Dr. Draken. But since Ron knew that being corrupted by the Red Rage could be far worse than become Zorprox, if the Red Rage fully took over Ron, he'd be corrupted by pure hatred rage, and any humanity that he had left would be gone entirely. "Yori, I need you," Ron thought, losing hope. "Ron, are you alright?" Ron then raised his head to see that Kim was entering the shower. Unlike last time, Ron did not react to the embarrassment since he was more used to seeing Kim at this point. After all, the two of them have both given up their innocence to each other, so Ron was used to it at this point. "Does it look like it?" Ron said flatly, wiping tears from his face. Kim shut the shower door and leaned down to comfort him. "Is it about Bonnie?" she asked worriedly. It's not just that," Ron sniffled. "It's the Red Rage. It's becoming so harder to control each day. I've been doing this every day I can to try to keep it at bay. But its influence is getting stronger, Kim. I could feel it getting stronger every day, and Yori hasn't replied to me. She promised to start training me, but I haven't heard back from her. Without Yori's training, I could end up being in horrible danger. What if I suddenly lose control and can't hold the Red Rage anymore? I'm just so afraid that I'll lose control again and hurt you and the others." Kim quickly pulled Ron into a wet hug and slid into the sides, now laying on the wet shower floor. "Don't lose hope, Ron," she soothed. "What happened to Bonnie was horrible, but we can't let it get to us. We'll move on, and I promise that I'll do whatever I can to help you get through it. You're strong, much stronger than ever, and I know you'll make it through this." Ron embraced Kim as well and then leaned in on her shoulder. I'm just worried about you and everyone else," he admitted. "You're the only thing that gives me strength and gives me the hold back the Red Rage. If I lost you, I know that I'd lose complete control and became a slave to that evil force. Master Sensei warned me that we'd face hard times, but I didn't think it'd be this bad. Every day we lose someone close to us, or more than innocent people die at the hands of the evil organization. Japan is in ruins, the Yamidochi ninja clan is gone, and now Bonnie's dead." Ron felt his tears running down his face as Kim embraced him, which was mixed with the hot shower water. "Ron, I'll never leave you, and that's a promise," Kim whispered in his ear. "We'll make this through, and I know we will." I don't know, Kim," Ron replied with a sniff. "Ridley's always one step ahead of us, and he's already killed so many innocent people." "That may be true, but hopefully we'll find something in that abandoned town that will help us locate Ridley, or at least provide some useful info on him," Kim speculated. "I hope so," Ron replied with a sad sigh. "I sure hope Yori speaks to me again. I could really use her help in trying to control the Red Rage." "I'm sure she'll respond at some point. Maybe she was busy training," Kim guessed. "She's always responding to me when I contact her with telepathy, always," Ron said with a worried voice. "Ron, don't think about that right now. Let's just stay like this for a while," Kim replied, brushing Ron's wet hair. "Actually, what is it, Kim?" Ron asked. She leaned in towards his hair. Let's do what we did last night here in our room. It will help us forget this tragedy, for now." Kim then pulled Ron into a deep, passionate kiss, as the two soon lost each other in passion as the hot water poured all over them. It was around 1:30 p.m. by the time Kim and Ron had reached the town of Dark Wood, since it was 6 hours away from Middleton. But since they had traveled there there with Kim's coupe in the flying mode, they had managed to reach it a few hours early. Once it came into view, Kim landed their coupe on the cracked, weed-covered road and switched it back to driving mode. Then they continued passing it towards town. A large rusty sign, faded with littering food, stood beside it, with the road tilted to the one side, which meant, "Welcome to Darkwood." Once Kim and Ron passed it, they were able to see the town of Darkwood coming into view, and it was small. The town was surrounded by a row of mountains, with houses lined up to the bottoms of them. They were all being overtaken by Mother Nature. As Kim and Ron drove further into town, they found various buildings and some of the houses covered in vines, which some of them were falling apart from years of neglect and decay from the elements of nature. The roads were cracked, covered in potholes, and even some had tall weeds growing out of them. The whole town had clearly been abandoned for a long time, but those had no signs of life anywhere, except for a few raccoons and birds, and even a few abandoned cars and trucks parked on the parking lot that had once been there since a food store a long time ago. Their paint was faded and peeling in some areas. Some rust spots in several areas of the roofs and the doors the tires were flat and cracked as well. Abandoned vehicles also appeared to be early 2000 or late 1990s models, judging by how old they looked. "Wow, Dr. Director wasn't joking when she said Darkwoods had been abandoned," Ron exclaimed, upon seeing the town being overtaken by nature. "The place looks like an abandoned city of Chernobyl." "Yes, it looks like it," Kim replied. "I get it why it's abandoned like this. Dr. Director said there wasn't any info on Dark Web was abandoned like this, so we'll have to explore this place for clues." "The only problem is I don't know where to start looking," Ron said, glancing out of the window. "This place looks about 15 blocks wide. Well, that abandoned police station looks like it would be worth looking into first," Kim suggested, pointing at the police station with the broken, cracked windows, which had overgrown vines and grass growing around it. There were a few abandoned police cars grown out in the tall grass, but of course, the station was in the same state as the other abandoned vehicles. "Yeah, that actually does sound like a good start," Ron agreed. "Let's search here then," Kim said, then pulled the coupe into a abandoned parking lot where it's lot near the two old rusty police cars. Two large rats ran out of the police cars and into the tall overgrown grass as Kim and Ron got out of their vehicles, startling them. "Looks like these cars aren't so abandoned," Ron joked about upon seeing the rats. "Doesn't surprise me," Kim replied, not too interested in the joke. "Since there's no human population here, nature has pretty much reclaimed this whole town. I wouldn't be surprised if these were more of these buildings." "Yeah, but I doubt they'll bother us," Ron said, glancing at the building. "These drones don't seem to care about us. Let's check out the place." Kim and Ron headed towards the entrance of the old police station, where they found the two double doors bent and covered in rust. The glass was cracked and broke, and so reaching in and unlocking them wasn't hard. The doors practically fell off when Ron pulled them open. The glass showered the ground around them. "Man, this place is falling apart already," Ron exclaimed as he and Kim entered the building. "It kind of happens when you leave a building abandoned for 10 years, Kim replied. "We better watch our step for any broken glass around here." "Why don't we split up and see what we can find? We'll keep in touch with our communicators," Ron suggested. "That shouldn't be a problem, but since we're the only ones in this town, but we better keep the eyes open in case of something unusual turns up," Kim replied as they came to what looked like a lobby area. Despite 10 years of abandonment, most of it was pretty well intact, except for the fact that everything was dusty and covered in cobwebs. Ron approached the front desk and found an old Windows 98 PC still sitting on the table. It appeared to be in good condition, despite it being left in the building for 10 years. The tower sat under the table with dust covering it. Ron doubted it would work, but there was no way to know since the power in the building wasn't working. Across the lobby were two doors that would lead to various parts of the old building. Both their labels had faded over time. "I remember these things," Ron said, examining the PC tower. You and I were just kids back when these things were popular. I wouldn't try powering that thing up. It's been rotting here for 10 years, and it might blow up on us or burst into flames, Kim advised. Power's out, so that's not possible. You got a good point there, Kim said, glancing up at the old hanging lamp. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to get power back on, even if we found the junction box, since it hasn't been used in 10 years. The junction box would probably be broken anyway, Ron speculated. We can use our flashlights if we come across any dark rooms. Yeah, that'll work, Kim replied. And I'll take the door to the left and you take to the right. All right, I'll see what I can find, Ron said, then headed for the right door. A long hallway was dimly lit by the lights of the sun rushing through from the entrance, so it was hard for Ron to see what was ahead of him. He pulled out his lead flashlight out from his belt and shined it through in front of him. Lighting up a small hallway, Ron saw very few of the doors of this hall wide open, but others were closed. He did try to pull one of the door rooms closest to him that had been door open, but of course Ron headed inside with Rufus poking out his head. The small mole rat had been quiet ever since Kim and Ron had left the hideout a long time ago. No doubt that the events that had been transpired the other day, yet Rufus couldn't help but feeling a bit curious as to what may be landing in this abandoned station. Ron then shined his light through all around the small room and found most of it to be empty, save for a few knocked out filing cabinets that had worn out paper scattered all over the place. Ron then checked for a few of them, but they were all too faded and worn to see what was on them. Having no luck, Ron headed out of the room and then tried the next one, only to find that it was empty. Now, there was nothing in it, but the next 4 rooms were all the same as for the second one, completely empty with nothing in them, maybe a chair or two. Ron sighed in frustration as he came to the last closed door at the end of the hallway. Well, there's pretty much nothing in these rooms, Ron said with a frustrated sigh. This one's probably different. Ron then grabbed the handle and found it to be locked with surprise. Then he noticed a name tag on the side of the door, which was labeled Chief Todd Farkas. As soon as Ron saw the name Farkas, he felt his heart skip a beat. That was Ridley's last name. Maybe not, Ron said darkly. Then he used his mystical monkey powers to seize his strength. Ron then quickly smashed the doorknob off and forced the door open. Once he entered the room, he shined his light inside of it. He and Rufus saw a large desk sitting in the center of the large square room. An old Windows 98 PC was one of the lobby, but the tower was missing, and there were a few papers scattered everywhere. It as if someone had raided the whole place. Yet, Ron wasn't so sure what was the case. He walked into the other room and found the side of the desk, where he found a police badge laying on the floor next to it, and it was broken into 2 pieces. Ron couldn't read the name of it, because it was broken and faded at the time. He turned back the desk. Ron noticed one thing laying on the desk that caught his attention. Upon shining his lights towards it, Ron noticed that it was an old newspaper, but it was still whole and intact. He picked it up and saw the words slightly faded, but yet they were still easily readable. The top of the headline caught Ron's attention, though, and it said this: Cruelest abuse of power in the history of Darkwood brought Justice Police Chief Todd Farkas to found guilty on all charges. What the hell? Ron muttered in concern, opening the newspaper and examining it.